Two men once sat in the same room and agreed that artificial intelligence was too dangerous to be controlled by any single company.
AI is probably the single biggest item in the near term that's likely to affect humanity. So
that was 2015. 10 years later, they cannot agree on anything, including who betrayed who first.
Carl, that's right. So this rivalry between two of the biggest CEOs in tech really did flare up again over the weekend. Elon Musk chimed in on the news Friday that Apple is suing OpenAI.
This is the story of Elon Musk and Sam Altman, and how a partnership built to protect humanity from artificial intelligence collapsed into one of the ugliest rivalries in Silicon Valley.
Usual, not even artificial intelligence could make it up. Jury selection begins today in a high-stakes lawsuit from billionaire Elon Musk targeting OpenAI CEO Sam Altman.
Elon Musk and Sam Altman over OpenAI's shift to a for-profit model heading to court today.
OpenAI was founded as a non-profit research lab with a simple mission: build advanced artificial intelligence and make sure it benefits everyone, not just whoever builds it first. That mission grew out of a shared fear among its founders, a worry that artificial intelligence controlled by one company or one government could be dangerous for everyone else. Musk was one of 11 co-founders.
I mean, you seem somewhat frustrated with them. You were one of the big contributors early on.
The reason I am the reason OpenAI exists.
He put in tens of millions of dollars of his own money over several years to help get the lab off the ground. And for a while, he was one of its loudest public champions, talking about the project constantly and treating it as one of the most important things he was involved in. In its earliest years, the lab operated almost like a research collective, publishing papers openly and framing itself as a counterweight to the handful of giant companies already racing to build advanced artificial intelligence behind closed doors. That openness was part of the name itself. Musk co-chaired the organization in those first years alongside Altman, and the two of them were frequently described in the press as aligned on almost everything. Two very different kinds of Silicon Valley figures united by the same worry about where this technology was headed, if left entirely in corporate hands. But inside the lab, a different conversation was already happening. By 2017, the founders had quietly concluded that a pure non-profit could never compete for the researchers and the computing power needed to build cutting-edge systems. Non-profits do not raise venture capital, and the kind of artificial intelligence they wanted to build was getting expensive fast. That year, discussions began about creating a for-profit arm underneath the non-profit, a structure that could raise real money while, at least on paper, keeping the original mission in charge. This detail matters later, because it means the plan Musk would eventually call a betrayal was already being discussed while he still sat on the board. In early 2018, Musk proposed a solution of his own: give him direct control. He suggested folding OpenAI into Tesla, or taking a majority stake in a new for-profit arm built around it. The other founders, including Altman, Greg Brockman, and Ilya Sutskever, said no. Musk left the board that February. Publicly, he cited a potential conflict of interest with Tesla's own growing work on artificial intelligence. Later reporting suggested the real dispute was simply about who would be in charge going forward, not about any conflict at all. With Musk gone, Altman rebuilt OpenAI around the structure that had already been under discussion: a for-profit subsidiary capped in how much it could return to investors, sitting underneath the original non-profit board. It worked. Microsoft began investing in 2019 and eventually committed around $13 billion over the following years. OpenAI built ChatGPT, and a research lab most people had never heard of became the center of the entire artificial intelligence industry almost overnight. Valued at hundreds of billions of dollars within a few years of a product most people assumed was still years away. Musk did not sit on the sidelines watching. Around this same period, he recruited engineers away from OpenAI to work on Tesla's own self-driving systems, including a well-known researcher named Andrej Karpathy, who had helped build OpenAI's early research team before moving to Tesla to lead its autopilot effort. Then in 2023, Musk launched a competing lab of his own, called xAI, and released a rival model called Grok. For the first time since leaving the board, Musk had a direct financial stake in believing that OpenAI had gone wrong, because now he was building the thing meant to beat it. In February 2024, he sued. Musk accused OpenAI, Altman, and Brockman of abandoning the founding promise to remain a non-profit, devoted to the safe development of artificial intelligence, and of enriching themselves in the process. Microsoft was later added as a defendant too, accused of helping fund and benefit from that same abandoned promise. The case moved slowly through the courts for more than a year. Then in May of 2025, OpenAI announced it would not fully convert into a traditional for-profit company after all, and would keep its non-profit board in a controlling position. Musk's legal team said the lawsuit would continue regardless. 5 months later, in October of 2025, OpenAI finalized a new structure anyway, forming a for-profit company with the original non-profit holding a minority ownership stake and Microsoft holding a similar sized stake of its own. Under that new structure, the original non-profit kept roughly 26% ownership of the new for-profit company, with Microsoft holding a similar stake of about 27%. To Altman and his supporters, that was proof the non-profit still mattered, still had a real seat at the table, and still stood to benefit financially from everything the company built going forward. To Musk, a 26% stake was proof of the opposite. A non-profit that used to run the entire organization, now reduced to a minority shareholder in a business built on a mission it no longer controlled. In April of 2026, just weeks before trial, Musk amended his case one more time, asking that any damages be paid directly into OpenAI's non-profit, rather than to himself personally, and formally demanding that Altman be removed from the board. The trial finally opened at the end of April 2026 in a federal courthouse in Oakland, California, and ran for 11 days of testimony and argument. Musk took the stand and pushed for Altman's removal directly to the jury. Altman testified, so did Brockman, and so did Microsoft Chief Executive Satya Nadella. Lawyers for OpenAI argued that Musk had known about the plan for a for-profit arm since at least 2017, years before he ever filed suit, and that internal documents showed Altman had even sent Musk paperwork back in 2018 outlining plans to raise billions through exactly this kind of structure. Their argument was simple. Musk was not surprised by any of this. He just did not have control of it anymore, and he did not sue until after OpenAI became one of the most valuable private companies on Earth and a direct rival to his own artificial intelligence business. Musk's lawyers argued the opposite story, that the non-profit had been hollowed out and treated like an empty shell once the for-profit entity took shape, with employees and intellectual property quietly shifted over to the new side of the business. One of Musk's attorneys told the court that OpenAI had abandoned its commitment to safety and open access, and had instead enriched investors and insiders at the expense of the mission Musk helped fund in the first place. Lawyers for OpenAI countered that Musk's original donations came with no strings attached, meaning he had no legal claim to how that money, or the organization it helped build, was used later on. Outside the courthouse, a small group of protesters showed up with signs raising broader concerns about artificial intelligence itself, a reminder that this case had become a stand-in for a much bigger argument happening across the entire industry. Deliberations began at 8:30 in the morning. By a little after 10 o'clock, the courtroom deputy walked a note to the judge. She looked at it and said simply, "We have a verdict." It had taken the jury less than 2 hours to decide a case that had consumed 2 years of litigation and 11 days of testimony. On May 18th, 2026, the jury returned its verdict after less than 2 hours of deliberation. They did not rule on whether OpenAI had actually betrayed its mission. They ruled that Musk had simply waited too long to sue, that the legal clock on his claims had already run out years before he filed. The judge accepted the finding immediately, and every claim was dismissed, including the case against Microsoft. OpenAI's lead attorney told reporters outside the courthouse that this was not just a technical decision, it was a substantive one. Musk's own attorney disagreed just as firmly. saying the case was always about protecting a charity from exactly this kind of exploitation, and that letting it stand would set a dangerous precedent. It was a clear legal win for Altman, but not the kind of win that actually settles anything. The court never touched the real question everyone wanted answered: whether turning a charity into one of the most valuable companies on earth was a betrayal of its founding promise, or simply what it took to survive against much larger rivals. Musk called the result a technicality on social media within hours of the ruling, repeated his accusations that Altman and Brockman had enriched themselves by taking over a charity, and said he intended to appeal. That appeal is still working its way through the courts. The peace, such as it was, did not last 2 months. In July 2026, Apple filed its own lawsuit against OpenAI, an entirely separate case accusing the company of using job interviews and former Apple employees to obtain trade secrets tied to hardware development. Musk seized on it within hours, posting that Altman had gone from stealing a charity to stealing Apple's phone technology as well, and mocking him personally in the process. Altman fired back almost immediately, mocking Musk's own recent public offering and accusing him of selling investors on space-based data centers that do not exist yet. By this point, both men were racing toward public markets at the same time. OpenAI had confidentially filed for its own initial public offering. Musk's company, renamed SpaceX AI after SpaceX absorbed xAI earlier in the year, had just completed a record-setting public offering of its own, and Musk had recently become the first person in history worth more than $1 trillion. While Altman's reported fortune sat in the low single-digit billions by comparison, a wealth gap that made the back-and-forth insults land very differently depending on who was reading them. The timing kept making things worse. OpenAI released a new flagship model called GPT 5.6 Sol. 1 day later, SpaceX AI answered with its own release, Grok 4.5. What started in 2015 as a shared concern about who should control artificial intelligence had turned, 11 years later, into a public brawl over space stations, phones, and stock prices, playing out to millions of people in real time on the very platform Musk himself owns. Zoom out far enough, and this stops being a story about two billionaires trading insults online. Every major artificial intelligence lab today, from OpenAI to Google DeepMind to Musk's own venture, is wrestling with some version of the same question that split this partnership apart. How do you fund research that costs billions of dollars while still claiming to serve a mission bigger than shareholder returns? OpenAI chose one answer. Musk built xAI specifically because he did not accept that answer. Neither man has ever admitted the other might have simply made a different, defensible choice under enormous pressure, and that refusal to grant the other any good faith at all is probably the most honest thing either of them has said this entire decade. Neither side has walked away, and neither side seems to want to. One man built the lab, the other built the company it became. Musk still says the mission was stolen from him. Altman still says the mission required exactly the choices he made to survive. 10 years later, they are still fighting over who gets to say what it was always supposed to be. And with an appeal still pending, two competing companies both headed for public markets, and a brand new lawsuit from Apple sitting on top of everything else, this is not a story that is finished yet. If you want more breakdowns like this one, subscribe to TechNate News, drop a comment with your take on who actually broke the original promise first, and hit like before you go.